The night was cold, and the road was almost empty. The sound of rain mixed with the growl of thunder. A small car drove too fast, its lights cutting through the darkness. Inside the car sat a young girl, her hands shaking on the wheel. She was scared, but she did not know why. She felt as if someone was chasing her. Yet she could not remember who. The car slipped on the wet road. The tires screamed. In a single moment, the world turned upside down. The car crashed into the barrier. Glass shattered, metal twisted. The sound was sharp and cruel, and then silence fell. The girl's head hit the window, her vision blurred. She tried to cry out, but no sound came from her lips. She opened her eyes after some time, not knowing how long she had been lying there. The rain had stopped, but the road was empty. Her car was broken, smoke rising from the hood. She touched her forehead and felt warm blood running down. Her heart raced, her breath quickened. But the worst part was not the pain. It was the emptiness inside her mind. She did not know her name. She did not know where she had been going. She did not even know who she was. The memory was gone, taken away in the crash. She crawled out of the broken door, her hands shaking, bare feet touched the wet ground. Her dress torn, she looked around with frightened eyes. The world felt strange, like a place she had never seen before. The only thing she could feel was fear. Fear and loneliness. Hours passed as she walked down the road, her legs weak, her stomach empty. She fell many times, but she forced herself to rise again. Her lips whispered sounds, but no words came. She tried to remember just one thing, any small thing, but her mind was empty like a broken mirror. Then she heard them. Soft footsteps behind her, quiet but steady. She turned around in panic, thinking someone was coming to hurt her. But what she saw were not people. They were dogs, thin and hungry, their ribs showing under the skin. Stray dogs, moving carefully, eyes glowing in the dark. The girl froze. Unsure what to do, the dogs sniffed the air and came closer. She thought they would bite her. Instead, one of them licked her hand. Another lay down near her feet, as if guarding her. Tears filled her eyes, because for the first time since the accident, she was not alone. She followed the dogs as they walked into the town's back alleys. Their broken boxes, trash cans, and shadows became her shelter. The girl curled up beside the dogs, her body shaking from cold, but the dogs pressed against her. Giving her warmth, she fell asleep in their circle. In the silence of the night, she felt like she belonged. Days turned into weeks. She lived like one of them, drinking rainwater, eating scraps from garbage. When she moved, they moved. When she slept, they slept beside her. People on the streets began to notice her. Children whispered that a mad girl lived with the strays. Shopkeepers shouted and threw stones to drive her away, but the dogs always protected her, growling at anyone who came too close. Every time she looked into a broken mirror in the alley, she saw a face she did not know. Her own eyes looked like a stranger's. Her tangled hair fell across her shoulders. Her lips cracked from thirst. She wanted to ask, "Who am I?" But there was no answer, only silence, only the dogs. One evening, as the sun sank low, the girl stood on the corner of a busy street. Her eyes wide and empty. Cars moved past her, lights flashing, engines roaring, but nobody stopped, nobody cared. She raised her hand as if to call someone, anyone, but the crowd ignored her. Her body swayed, weak from hunger. At last, she fell to the ground, the dogs rushing to her side. They barked wildly, as if crying for help, from the shadows of the street. Someone watched, a man, standing with a bag of food in his hand. He had come only to feed the strays, as he did every evening, but now his eyes widened in shock. There, among the animals, lay a girl fragile, broken and lost. She looked less like a human and more like a stray herself. And in that single moment, his life and hers was about to change forever. Life with stray dogs. The morning sun rose slowly, shining on the dirty alley where the girl opened her eyes. Her body was weak, her clothes still wet from the night before. Around her, the stray dogs stretched and yawned, shaking off the cold. One of them nudged her with its nose, as if asking her to wake. She blinked, confused, her stomach growling with hunger. The memory of the accident was still gone, leaving only an empty space inside her head. The girl tried to stand, but her legs trembled. She held on to a broken wall, her eyes moving to the street. People walked past carrying food, baskets, and bags. The smell of fresh bread reached her nose, making her mouth water. She stepped closer, but when the shopkeeper saw her, he shouted, "Go away, dirty girl. You and your dogs don't belong here." He threw a stone, and she cried out, hiding behind her furry companions. The dogs barked fiercely, protecting her, but the people laughed and called her names: wild, mad, useless. She backed into the alley once more. Her heart heavy, she did not understand why everyone hated her. She did not even know who she was. The dogs pressed against her legs, as if telling her she was not alone, so she stayed with them day and night. She learned to eat the way they did, pulling scraps from garbage. She drank water from dirty puddles, copying their movements. At first, she gagged. But then hunger pushed her to survive. Step by step, she became more like them. Time passed strangely. Days blended into nights, and nights into days. The girl forgot the sound of human voices. She stopped trying to speak because nobody listened. Instead, she barked softly at the dogs. She growled when someone tried to come close. The people whispered about her. They said she was cursed or touched by madness, but none dared to harm her because the dogs were always at her side. Sometimes children threw food at her just to see her fight with the strays, but she never fought them. She shared every piece equally, placing it before the weakest dog first. The pack accepted her, and she became one of them at night. She curled in their circle, the sound of breathing and warm fur making her feel safe. She dreamed of faces she could not remember, voices she could not name. Each morning she awoke with tears on her cheeks one evening as the sky turned red. She sat with the dogs near the market, her eyes watching the crowd. A little girl holding her mother's hand dropped a piece of bread. The stray girl's body moved fast. Crawling forward, she picked up the bread with trembling hands, but instead of eating, she sniffed it like an animal, unsure what to do. The mother gasped in horror, pulling her daughter away. "Don't touch her, she's filthy." The woman cried. The stray girl froze, shame burning inside her chest. She wanted to scream that she was human too, but no words came. Only silence, only pain. The dogs circled around her, licking her hands. One even placed its head on her lap. She looked into its eyes and felt comfort. For the first time, she smiled faintly. Perhaps she was not human anymore. Perhaps she was something else, but at least here she belonged. Weeks later, the weather grew colder. The stray girl's body became thinner. Weaker, the dogs searched harder for food, sometimes returning with nothing. One night, she collapsed near the alley's corner, too tired to rise. The pack howled, their cries echoing through the streets. From the shadows, the same man from before watched again. He had seen her before, half girl, half stray, but this time his heart could not look away. He stepped closer, his boots splashing in the puddles. The dogs barked and growled. But he placed a bag of food on the ground. Slowly, he sat down on the wet stones, not moving any further. His eyes softened as he spoke in a calm voice. "I won't hurt you. Eat." The girl's eyes narrowed with suspicion. She had learned that people meant danger, pain, rejection, but the smell of food was too strong. One of the dogs pulled the bag closer and tore it open. Pieces of bread and meat spilled out. The girl reached slowly, Taking one piece with shaking fingers, she bit it. The taste so different from rotten scraps. Her eyes widened, tears sliding down her cheeks. The man did not move. He only watched, in that moment. A spark of something new. Appeared hope. That night, the girl did not sleep easily. Her mind was restless, filled with images of the man's face. She did not know his name, did not know why he had helped her. But something inside told her this was only the beginning. The stray dogs had given her survival, but this man, he might give her life again. The mysterious man-thing. Next morning, the stray girl woke to the sound of footsteps. Her dogs barked softly, their ears standing tall. She looked up and saw the same man again, standing a short distance away. He carried another bag in his hand. Filled with food, he did not come too close. He only placed the bag on the ground, then stepped back. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Eat. It's for you." The dogs sniffed first, growling low. But when they found no danger, they tore into the bag. The girl joined them, pulling out bread with shaky hands. She ate quickly, almost afraid the food would vanish. The man simply stood there, watching. His eyes were filled not with fear or disgust like the others, but with something different. Something she had not seen before. Pity, maybe even kindness. For days, he returned, always at the same time. Each time he brought food. Each time he spoke softly, even when she never answered. The villagers whispered about him. They called him foolish for wasting food on a wild creature. But he ignored their words, his eyes always finding her in the shadows. The girl started to notice things about him. His clothes were simple, worn from work, his hands rough, as if he labored every day, his hair dark, with lines of gray at the edges. But his smile was quiet, steady, not forced, not mocking. It was the smile of someone who wanted nothing from her. This confused her. Why would a man care for a stray like her? One rainy evening, she shivered in the corner of the alley. The pack huddled close. But the cold was too strong. Her teeth chattered, her lips turning blue. Then she saw him again, walking through the rain. He carried no umbrella, only a thick blanket. He placed the food down as always. But this time, he took one step more. Slowly, carefully, he held the blanket out. "You're freezing," he said softly. "Please take it." The girl growled like a dog, her eyes wide with fear. The dogs barked, circling him, ready to protect her, but he did not move closer. He only knelt down and set the blanket on the wet ground. Then he stepped back, lifting his empty hands. "No harm," he whispered. The girl stared at the blanket for a long time. Her body shook, torn between fear and need. At last, she crawled forward and grabbed it. She pulled it around her thin body. For the first time in months, warmth filled her skin. Her eyes lifted to his face. For the first time, she did not see a threat. She saw safety. That night, she dreamed, not of empty alleys or cold streets, but of gentle voices calling her name, though she could not remember what that name was. She woke with tears on her cheeks, clutching the blanket tightly. The days passed, and the man came again and again. He never forced her to speak. He never tried to take her away. He only offered food. And sometimes small things: a bottle of clean water, a piece of fruit. Little by little, she began to wait for him. Her dogs still guarded her, but they no longer growled when he came. They seemed to understand something she could not: that he was different. One afternoon, the villagers gathered near the alley. They laughed and pointed at the girl. "She is not human anymore." One man shouted, "She belongs with the dogs." Another said. The girl crouched low, covering her ears. But then the man appeared, stepping between her and the crowd. "Leave her alone," he said firmly. "She's not trash. She's not an animal. She's a person." The crowd laughed louder, but they walked away, muttering insults. The girl looked at him with wide eyes. No one had ever defended her before. In that moment, something inside her cracked. Her heart whispered a truth she did not understand he cared. Still, fear held her back. When he reached out his hand, one evening, she flinched, her body pressed against the wall. Ready to run, his hand froze in the air, then slowly dropped. "I won't force you," he said softly. "I'll wait until you trust me." His patience unsettled her. She was used to cruelty, rejection, and stones, but patience, kindness. She did not know what to do with them, so she watched him in silence, every movement, every word, her mind still empty of memories, but her heart beginning to feel something new. One night, as the moonlight fell on the alley, she sat with her dogs, the blanket wrapped tightly around her. The man was gone for the evening, but she whispered into the darkness, her voice cracked and broken. "Why? Why is he not afraid of me?" Her dogs only wagged their tails, but her question remained, echoing in her heart. The stray girl did not know it yet, but this mysterious man was about to change everything. Her life of silence and shadows was slowly turning into something else, something brighter, something warmer, something like love. First touch of kindness, the days grew colder, and the nights felt longer. The girl slept huddled between the dogs, her thin body shaking with every gust of wind. The blanket the man had given her kept her alive, but hunger and loneliness still gnawed at her heart. Every evening, she waited at the edge of the alley, watching the corner where he always appeared, and every evening he came, carrying food. His face calm, his eyes kind. The dogs barked happily now, as if they too had accepted him as part of their strange family. One night, the rain fell heavy, beating down on the rooftops and flooding the streets. The girl and her dogs ran for cover, but the alley was already filling with water. Her body shivered, her hair stuck to her face, and fear gripped her heart for the first time. She ran not deeper into the shadows, but toward the man's small house on the edge of the market. The dogs followed, their wet paws splashing in the puddles. When she reached his porch, she collapsed against the wooden steps. Too weak to move further, the dogs circled her, whining and shaking off the rain. Moments later, the door creaked open. The man stood there with a lantern, his eyes widening. At the sight, You came," he whispered, his voice filled with surprise without waiting. He rushed inside and returned with towels and another blanket. He knelt on the porch, ignoring the rain that soaked his clothes. Slowly, carefully, he placed the dry blanket over her shoulders. She flinched at first, her body stiff. No one had touched her since the accident, but his hands were gentle, his movements calm. For the first time, she did not run. The warmth spread through her, not only from the blanket, but from the kindness itself. Her wide eyes lifted, meeting his gaze. There was no laughter, no cruelty, no fear, only care. Her lips trembled, and for the first time, a sound escaped her throat. It was not a word, only a broken whimper, yet the man's face softened, and he smiled. "It's all right," he whispered. "You're safe here." The dogs pressed close to her sides, but they did not growl. They watched the man with calm eyes, as if telling her to trust him. Her trembling fingers clutched the blanket tighter. She wanted to speak, to ask why he was being kind when the whole world had rejected her. But her tongue felt heavy, her mind too broken. So she stayed silent, yet deep inside, a seed of trust had been planted. From that night, things began to change. The man no longer only left food at the edge of the alley. He began sitting with her, speaking slowly, teaching her small things. "This is bread," he would say, holding it up. "This is water," he added. Showing her the bottle, she listened quietly, her eyes studying his lips. Sometimes she copied the words in whispers, but they came out broken. Still, he never mocked her. He only encouraged her. "You're learning," he said with a smile. "You're stronger than you think." The villagers laughed at him, calling him a fool. "Why waste your time on that girl?" They jeered. "She's more dog than human now," but the man ignored them. Every time they threw insults, he only looked at the girl with steady eyes, and she, though silent, felt her heart slowly opening. One evening, when the sky turned gold, the man reached out his hand once more. Her body tensed, ready to run. But then she saw the blanket folded neatly over his arm. She remembered the warmth of that first touch. Her heart raced, torn between fear and need. Slowly, almost without thinking, she stretched out her hand. Her fingers brushed against his. It was the lightest touch, fragile and brief, but it was real. He smiled softly, not moving further. "See, I told you." No harm. Tears stung her eyes, and she pulled back quickly, but inside her chest, something had changed. For the first time since the accident, she felt human again, not just a stray. Not just a shadow in the alley, but a girl. A girl who had been touched with kindness. That night she dreamed again. A woman's face appeared, blurry but warm. A voice whispered her name, though she could not hear it clearly. She woke with her heart pounding. Clutching the blanket tightly, the memory was still far away, but the feeling of belonging was closer than ever. The man continued his quiet mission. Never rushing, never demanding. Each evening, he sat with her a little longer. Sometimes he told her stories about the village. Sometimes he only sat in silence. And every time, the girl listened, her eyes wide, her heart learning what her mind had forgotten. Trust. The stray dogs remained her protectors. But now they shared their circle with him. He was no longer just a stranger. He was something else. Something she could not yet name. But deep down she knew this was only the beginning. Because one touch of kindness had already broken through the walls around her heart. The struggle for change. The girl sat on the porch, the blanket around her shoulders. Her dogs curled beside her. The man had gone inside for a moment, leaving her with food and water. She looked at the door, her heart beating fast. Inside was warmth, light, and safety. But the thought of stepping through that door filled her with fear. Her body remembered too well the cruelty of others. The stones, the shouts, the rejection. She pulled the blanket tighter, as if hiding inside it. When the man returned, he smiled. "You're cold out here," he said softly. "Come inside." Just for a while, he held the door open, the warm glow spilling into the night. The girl froze, her eyes wide. The dogs barked nervously, sensing her fear. Her chest rose and fell. Quickly, her fingers digging into the blanket. She shook her head violently and crawled backward into the dark. "No," her lips whispered, broken and weak. The man did not chase her. He only sighed. "All right," he said. "I won't force you." But inside his heart, he felt the weight of her pain. How broken must she be, he thought, to fear even kindness. Days passed, and he tried again. Each time he offered her the chance to come inside. Each time she resisted, clinging to the safety of the shadows. Her trust in him had grown, but the fear inside her still ruled her steps. It was not easy to erase months of pain and loneliness. It was not easy to believe she could belong again. The villagers saw all this and mocked him. "She's hopeless," they said. "She'll never be human again." They laughed, shaking their heads at the sight of the man talking to the girl who growled like a dog. But the man did not stop. He brought books with pictures, teaching her simple words. He showed her fruits and pointed to their names. He even drew shapes in the dirt, making her repeat after him. The progress was slow, painfully slow, but little. By little, she learned to say water, to say bread, and one day she even said thank. Though the word broke in the middle, the man's heart swelled at the sound. "That's enough," he whispered, smiling. "That's more than enough." But her struggle was not only with words. It was with herself. Some nights, when she lay with the dogs, she felt torn. Half of her heart wanted to stay in the alleys, where it was safe. The other half longed to step into the man's world, to sit at his table, to sleep under his roof. She did not know which part to trust. The fear of being hurt again was too strong. One evening, when the sun was setting, the man tried once more. He stepped toward her slowly and held out his hand. "Just one step," he said gently. Only one step. The girl looked at his hand. Then at the doorway, her heart pounded. The dogs whined, circling her. Confused, she lifted her hand, trembling. Reaching out, but just as her fingers brushed his, she panicked. She screamed and pulled back. Falling to the ground, her body shook violently, her breaths sharp and quick. The man knelt beside her, but did not touch her. "It's all right," he whispered. "I'm here. You're safe." Tears streamed down her face, and she pushed herself away. She hid behind the dogs. Ashamed of her own fear, the man sat quietly, giving her space. His patience seemed endless. He knew healing was not simple, not fast. He knew love was not about forcing, but waiting, still. The struggle inside her grew worse. She began to dream more often. Flashes of her past returned, voices, faces, places, but they were unclear. Broken like glass, the confusion hurt her more than the emptiness. She clutched her head and cried. In silence, the dogs licked her hands, trying to calm her. But the ache inside could not be healed by warmth alone. One night, a group of drunk men stumbled through the alley. They saw the girl crouched in the shadows. One laughed. "Look at her, the dog girl." Another picked up a stone, throwing it toward her. The dogs barked furiously, snapping at the men. But she cowered, covering her head. Then the man appeared, his voice sharp. "Leave her," he shouted, standing between them. The men cursed. But when they saw his steady eyes, they walked away. Muttering, the girl lifted her gaze slowly. Her heart pounded at the sight of him standing there, strong, unshaken. No one had ever defended her like that. That night, when he sat beside her, she did not pull away. She allowed his presence close. She even reached for the bread without fear, and when his hand brushed hers, she did not flinch. This time, her eyes filled with tears, her lips parted, struggling with broken words. "Why? You? Help me." The man smiled gently, his eyes soft, because everyone deserves a chance. He said, "Even you." The words sank into her heart like light breaking through the clouds. The struggle was far from over. Her fear still chained her. Her memories still haunted her, but now she knew one truth. She was not fighting alone. She had him, and with him. Maybe she could change. Memories began to return. The nights grew quieter. But inside the girl's mind, storms began to rise. For weeks, she had survived only in darkness, without memory, without a name. Now, because of the man's kindness, cracks were forming in that emptiness. Sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she saw flashy short, sharp and confusing. A woman's face smiling, then fading, a small hand holding hers. A car moving too fast on a wet road, she would wake up sweating. Clutching the blanket to her chest, her heart racing. The man noticed her troubled nights. He often found her sitting against the wall, staring into the distance with wide, frightened eyes. "Did you dream again?" he asked softly. She nodded, but words refused to come. Her lips trembled. Wanting to speak, but unable to, the man sighed and sat beside her, close but not touching. "Don't be afraid of the memories," he whispered. "They are part of who you are." But she was afraid. The memories hurt. They came like broken glass. Sharp and painful. Sometimes they showed laughter. Sometimes screams. Sometimes she heard her own voice calling, but she could not understand the words. The confusion made her cry silently at night, her dogs pressed against her sides. Warm and loyal, but even they could not fight the ghosts inside her mind. One evening, as the sun sank, she sat with the man by the fire he had made near the alley. The flames danced, lighting their faces. The man handed her a cup of warm broth. She held it carefully, sipping slowly, her eyes fixed on the fire. "Home," she whispered suddenly. Her voice cracked. The man turned sharply. "You? Remember? Home." Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. "Only word," she said softly. "Home." It was the first time she had spoken a memory. The man's heart leaped. "You will remember more," he said gently, step by step, but the girl was not sure if she wanted to. If home meant warmth, why did it also bring tears? As days passed, her struggle grew. She began to wander away from the alley, exploring the streets with her dogs. Sometimes the sound of children's laughter made her freeze. Sometimes the smell of perfume in the market made her gasp. Each small thing pulled at her heart, pieces of the past trying to return, but every memory also brought pain. She held her head and cried. The man was always there, steady and calm. He never let her suffer alone when she shook. He covered her with the blanket. When she cried, he sat silently beside her. When she looked lost, he said only one thing: "You're not alone anymore." But the villagers did not stop mocking. "She's broken," they said. "She will never live like us." One woman even spat on the ground, hissing, "She belongs with the dogs." The girl heard their words, and her chest ached. Part of her wanted to run back into the shadows, to live only as a stray forever. But when she looked at the man's face, calm and kind, she found courage to stay. Then one night, danger came. A group of men entered the alley with sticks, angry at the dogs who had stolen food from the market. They shouted and swung their sticks, striking the animals. The girl screamed, rushing forward. She threw herself over one of the dogs, shielding it with her body. A stick hit her shoulder. The pain burning, the man appeared in that moment, his voice loud and fierce. "Enough!" he shouted. He stood in front of her, blocking the men. "Touch her again, and you'll answer to me." The men hesitated, then left, grumbling. The girl lay trembling, clutching the injured dog, tears streaming down her face. The man knelt beside her. His hand hovered over her shoulder, then slowly rested on it. "It's all right," he whispered. "You're safe." That touch, firm, steady, warm, unlocked something deep inside her. Suddenly, a flood of images filled her mind. Car spinning, a crash, broken glass, a woman screaming her name, her own voice crying, then darkness. She gasped, gripping her head. The man held her gently as she shook. "What is it? What do you see?" he asked. She struggled to speak, the words broken but desperate. "Crash. Car. Mother." She whispered, sobbing. Her whole body trembled, her mind spinning, but for the first time she had remembered more than just a word. The man held her as she cried. He did not press her with questions. He did not demand answers. He simply let her cry into his chest. His hand stroked her tangled hair, his voice soft. "You're safe now. You're not lost anymore." That night, when she finally slept, her dreams were full of faces, blurry, distant, but real. Her past was returning, piece by piece, and though it terrified her, it also gave her strength. She was not just a stray girl anymore. She was someone with a story, someone with a family, someone who had been broken but not destroyed. The memories had begun to return, and with them, her fight to become whole again had truly started. A new life, a new name. The girl woke with swollen eyes, her heart heavy but different. She remembered more than before: shattered glass, a car crash, the echo of her mother's scream. It hurt, but it was real. For the first time since the accident, she felt like she was not empty inside. She was someone who had lived, someone who had lost. The man noticed the change in her when he came with food that morning. He found her waiting, not crouched in fear, not hiding in the shadows, but sitting in the open, her dogs around her, her eyes tired but steady. "You're stronger," he said softly. She looked at him and gave a small nod. Her lips moved, whispering broken words. "Remember?" "Mother," the man's chest tightened at the sound. "You will remember more," he told her, "and when you do, you won't face it alone." But even as memories returned, the world outside did not grow kinder. The villagers still mocked her. "She's cursed," they said. "She will bring ruin to your life." One evening, a woman spat at her feet. Calling her filth, the girl flinched, almost shrinking back into silence. But then she felt the man's steady hand on her shoulder. He faced the woman calmly. "She is not filth," he said firmly. "She is family now." The words struck her heart like lightning. Family. She had lost her past. But perhaps she was gaining something new. Her struggle was not over. Some nights the memories attacked her like wild beasts. She would wake screaming, clutching the blanket. The man rushed to her side, holding her gently until her shaking stopped. Other nights she dreamed of faces she did not know if she would ever see again. But with each nightmare, she also grew braver. She learned she could cry, she could hurt, and still wake up the next morning to face the day. One morning, the man decided to try something new. He held out a small comb and pointed at her tangled hair. "May I?" he asked gently. She stared, unsure, her instinct telling her to run. But after a long pause, she lowered her head. The comb slid through her hair slowly, carefully. Each stroke was gentle, patient. The girl closed her eyes, and tears rolled silently down her cheeks. The touch reminded her of something distant. Something warmed her mother's hands. For the first time, she did not feel like a stray. She felt like a daughter, cared for, human again. As weeks passed, the change became clear. She learned more words, short and broken, but enough to speak. She learned to laugh softly when the dogs played. She learned to sit at the man's table, though at first she trembled at every sound. And one evening, when the villagers passed by and sneered, she did not hide. She stood beside the man, her thin body straight. The dogs growled low, guarding her as always. But she no longer needed to crouch in their shadow. She was learning to stand. Then came the night of the final test. A fire broke out in one of the village houses, smoke filling the sky. The people screamed, running to save what they could inside. The burning home, a small child cried for help. The crowd panicked, no one daring to go in. The girl stood frozen, her heart racing. Flashes struck her mind. The car crash, her mother's scream, her own helplessness for a moment. Fear threatened to chain her again, but then she saw the man rushing forward, ready to risk himself. Her chest burned. She could not let him face danger alone. Not again. With a cry, she ran into the fire with him. The smoke burned her lungs. Her eyes stung, but she followed the child's cries. Crawling through the heat, her hands found the boy, small and shaking. She pulled him close. Coughing as the flames roared, the man appeared, lifting the child into his arms. Together, they stumbled out, collapsing onto the ground as the villagers cheered. The girl lay coughing, her face streaked with ash. The man looked at her with pride. "You saved him," he said. She blinked through tears. Her voice soft but clear. "Not dog," she whispered. "Human." Her words silenced the crowd for the first time. The villagers looked at her not with hate, but with awe. From that day, they no longer called her cursed. They no longer threw stones. They called her brave. They called her strong. The children even began to leave food for her dogs. No longer mocking, but smiling. The girl's heart, once broken, began to heal. One quiet evening, As she sat with the man and the dogs by the fire, she turned to him with trembling lips. "Name?" she whispered. He looked surprised. "You want a name?" She nodded, her eyes wide. He thought for a long moment, then said softly, "Grace." "Why?" "Grace," she asked, her voice broken but curious. "Because," he said, "you fell. You suffered, but you rose again with grace." Ah! The name settled in her heart like sunlight. Grace, it was not the name she had lost. Oh, but it was the name she chose for her new life. The man smiled, placing a hand over hers. "You are not lost anymore, Grace," he whispered. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not from pain. They were from hope. She leaned against him, our dogs circling them both. The night was quiet, the stars bright. Her old life had been shattered, but her new one had begun. She was no longer the stray girl, no longer nameless and forgotten. She was Grace, and with the man's love and kindness, she had been given life again.